So this will be my last ride with the Motoz Tractionator Adventure tire as my rear tire. After this, I am switching to the Rallz tire in the back. And before I make that switch, I want to take the time to provide a review and share my experience with the Motoz Tractionator Adventure tire as my rear tire. So my turn is already coming up here. I'm going to take the tire out on the trails so I can talk about it in its natural environment. But I don't want to have that third-person camera dangling off of my bike while I'm on this trail since it's relatively rough. So let me get off of the bike and let's see if we can get a good look at this. I don't know if my camera angle will be decent here. You can tell I still have plenty of life on this rear tire here. Hopefully you can see this next piece, but this is a patch I had to put in the tire within my first 1,000 miles, which is relatively unfortunate. But the tread is looking pretty good, and I have spent about 50% of my time with this tire, not 50% of my miles, but at least 50% of my time off-roading with this Tractionator Adventure tire, and I am very, very happy with it. So you might be wondering why I'm changing it so early, if it's still got some life in it, and outside of that patch, I'll jump into kind of the key reasons why I'm doing that. With that being said, let me take this camera off of the bike. I'll pack that away, and then we will hit the trails, and I'll find a good, nice, steep, loose, chunky rock section to put that tire to use, and we'll go over its pros and cons. All right, and just like that, I'm back on the bike. Let's throw it into off-road mode. I think I'm going to take the traction control off just for now. I'm sort of in the desert, and I don't know if you can tell, but things are just dusty and loose here. This might not look steep, but it's a relatively steep hill. Just to enter here, and I know there's some washboarding in the very beginning, and we'll get out to the trail section by taking this road. Hopefully you can hear me pretty well. I think I'm going to keep the visor open just because of the heat out here today. Not very hot, but there's not a cloud in sight, and it's just beaming down on me. So for starters, I'm on loose, steep, rocky terrain, and I'll just start off relatively casually, and you'll be able to see the Tractionator just pick up traction right away. No slipping there. So I'm going to take it easy until we get out into the actual trail. And something I want to talk about first and foremost is what I have used this tire for. I like to think in terms of adventure. I hard off-road the Touareg, and the Adventure was supposed to kind of make up for some of that harder riding and keep things under control for me. I've since become a much more decent rider than the time I put the tire on, and I've gained a lot of confidence as a rider with the Tractionator on the back of the bike. I put it on there at about, I don't know, low 2000s, mid 2000s of miles on the Touareg here, and I'm getting up to about 6,000, so not very high miles on the Touareg, not very high miles on the Tractionator itself, but nearly every ride I did after getting the Tractionator was taking the canyon roads out to some hard off-road spots and pushing my skills and limits as well as the tire's limits. And realistically, I see no reason to upgrade in order to get additional off-road performance. The tire eats just about everything. For the trails I've done so far, I haven't felt the need to even air down the rear tire, which I think is tremendously impressive because it performs well on the road and then it performs well off-road. Plus, you can still have a good bit of fun with the thing and just spin it out when you want to. So, one of the biggest problems I had when selecting a tire was making the decision between my last two choices, which came down to the Motoz Tractionator Adventure rear tire and the Motoz Tractionator Rallz for the rear tire. And this was a decision I went back and forth on for weeks, and I decided to make the practical choice, which is what I thought was the practical choice at the time, and go for the Adventure tire out back. The reason for this was I was under the impression I would get many more miles out of the Adventure tire than I would the Rallz tire, and I think this is still true. On the Touareg, you know, with me on it, everything, it's not a tremendously heavy adventure bike, so you might get a little bit more life out of tires, say if they were on, you know, like a GS or something like that, a full-size GS. That being said, I personally would expect to get 4,000 or 5,000 solid miles out of a Rallz, and I think this Adventure tire would give me a solid 6 to 7. especially if I were more conservative in my riding and didn't spin the tire as much as I didn't put myself in low traction scenarios and sort of kind of get the bike stuck. I think it would last even longer. They're both way too good a value in my opinion. I don't think you need to worry about not getting your money's worth out of the tire, and that's something I didn't realize when I bought the Adventure tire. Now, in the first 1,000 or so miles on the Adventure tire, I got a nice nail right through it, and in my mind at the time, I thought the tire was killed. I figured, hey, I'll throw a patch in it. I can still go riding, next weekend or ride some local trails and whatnot, but I got to get a new tire on there. Following this, I ordered the Rallz straight away, figuring, hey, if I'm not going to get good life out of my tires, I might as well go ahead and get the tire that I want. Looking back, I think this is what I should have just done in the very beginning, but I didn't know at the time. Then, as even more time went on and I got more and more comfortable with the Adventure tire, I realized I did not need to upgrade to the Rallz tire. The Adventure offered way more traction and off-road capability than anything I could need. I kept hitting harder and harder trails, and the tire, or the rear tire I should say, was hard from being my limiting factor off-road. I have so much fun with this tire, I can't even begin to explain. And something I'm nervous for shifting to with the Rallz, well, in scenarios like this, the Rallz will be excellent. Not sure what it looks like to you, but this is steep, chunky, dusty, loose rock. Oh. And that rear tire is not my problem on that terrain. I am my problem, and even if the rear tire were lacking a little bit on something like that, I could reduce the air. I could drive more responsibly. I could make a better line choice. I have so many options and so much control with this tire. And the other big piece is that this tire is excellent on the road. Now, it's nowhere close to the stock Pirelli Scorpion STRs that the Touareg came with. Those tires made this Touareg feel like kind of a sport bike on stilts. Definitely kind of an awkward machine, but you could really get into the corners. And maybe I have some footage of ripping up some canyons on the thing before I got these more off-road oriented tires on there, and I'll see if I can find that and throw that in. Not that I'm encouraging anyone to ride that way, but you can't expect that kind of performance out of something like these tires. I will say, though, I have never really pushed these tires on the road. One, I'm not entirely confident with them. Two, it's not what I got them for. It's not what the bike is for at this point in time. And out of all the unnecessary risks I take, I like to keep them off-road at this point in my life. So, let me actually hop back on the bike. We'll go back to that crazy hill there, and we'll get some shots of the tire in action. All right. Back to the steep, loose, chunky mess of a hill where the Tractionator Adventure, in my mind, really shines as a tire. I like to think, if you could see this in person, it's disgusting. It probably doesn't look like much in the video. You'll just have to take my word for it. But I think this here is very likely harder off-road than the majority of adventure riders will do on their middleweight to higher weight adventure motorcycles. And I can say with very high confidence that, I probably can't turn my head enough, the Tractionator Adventure rear tire is more than enough for this. And this is coming from someone who doesn't even air the thing down, where I'd be able to get additional off-road performance. I set my PSI before a ride. In this case, I've got maybe 32 in the rear and 31.5 in the front, which the front is a Tractionator Dual Venture, by the way. Also a great tire, very happy with that one. But I don't push the Tractionator Adventure's limits. And when I think about its ability to offer 6,000 plus miles, I think well beyond 6,000 miles for a lot of riders, as well as phenomenal on-road performance, extremely good off-road performance, it's so hard to beat in my mind. And I do feel relatively silly for switching to the Rallz, but the Rallz is going to offer some benefits that the Adventure rear does not have for me. The lug spacing is a little bit better and more aggressive. I think it looks cooler. That shouldn't be worth much, but it's worth something to me. And it's a softer compound, and that's one of the biggest things for me. My big ride this year, or the big ride that I'm hoping to do and that I'm kind of practicing for and building the bike out for, is riding Colorado's most dangerous pass, which is Black Bear Pass. And at this point in time, I've ridden terrain that looks significantly more challenging than the challenging parts of Black Bear Pass. But in my mind, if I'm going to have the Adventure tire for that ride or the Rallz tire for that ride, I think I'm better off for the Rallz. There might be some chunky, wet rock towards the more challenging part of that ride, and I think the softer compound on the Rallz will handle that a lot better. And that's my ride. That's my pinnacle ride for the year. It's what I train for. It's what I prep for. When I camp off the bike early in the season, those are my practice camping trips for that trip in particular. So I might as well put the tire on the bike that I think is the most appropriate for that trip, and that's what I'm doing. Okay. Well, anyway, I'm just going to casually get to the bottom of this hill so I don't end up dropping the bike too early. I've got to take this jacket off. You'll have to bear with me there, and we'll get some shots of that tire in action. Okay, nice. So, plan is, I'll throw my camera on this. I'm gonna maybe stick it out here. I actually don't know what angle to go for here. I don't want to damage the camera. I think we'll be fine. So I'll set that up and then I'll hop back to the video. Okay, so if you need any more evidence that I make bad decisions, check out this camera setup. Not necessarily rolling around in money, so sticking the camera off the side of my bike like that is not something I feel awesome about, but I want to see if I can get a good shot of this rear tire in action, so we will give it a go. Oh, this is a bad idea, huh? All right, well, oh, there's a truck behind us. I'm going to take it easy because I do not want to drop the bike on that camera. I can't get my left foot in the right position because the camera mount is in the way. I'm standing very awkwardly. All right, yeah, I am not going back down that with the camera hanging off the bike the way it currently is. So we will park, I will correct it, and we will get some different shots. But boy, do I hope for your sake that shot looked pretty cool. All right, so I had to delayer a little bit. I'm going slow speeds on this stuff, and I generally wear my gear more for abrasion resistance than impact. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to go down on this, but I think I can avoid damage to my torso if I happen to. So given the temperature and just the back and forth, I don't recommend this, but this is what I'm doing. So again, you likely can't tell how steep and terrible this hill is, but my plan is to just get a third-person shot of me going up this hill. I'm going to stop in the camera right in this dip here. Very loose and steep, and we're going to see if we can get going without lowering the pressure out of that tire. I kind of parked in a rock bed here, so let's just get rid of this guy. And let's see how it goes. Oh. The backpack is a much looser fit when I don't have the jacket on, and I don't feel like adjusting it. It's actually going to be sketchy getting out of this. Okay, we're good. All right, so I'm gonna go to the bottom. I'm gonna loop around. I'm gonna go up to the camera. I'm gonna park, and I'm gonna take off, if all goes well. All right, fingers crossed here. I'm gonna take it nice and easy, getting up to that point. Oh. Target fixated a rock there. right. Well, now that I'm in this position, dude, I kind of realized this was a bad idea. Whatever, let's see how it goes. Again, street pressure in that tire, steep, loose, dusty desert. Let's give it a go. Incredible. And once you have momentum, you can just kind of do whatever you want with this tire. Oh, that was a good one. It's kind of just like an adventure bike playground out here. There's a nice little obstacle course. Okay. That's pretty cool. Let's pretend I'm really out here trying to get up this hill. Dude, hopefully that looked fucking cool. All right, look at this. That's the coolest thing about losing traction in the desert. You leave behind what looks like an explosive cloud of dust. Makes you feel like some kind of extreme rider. Even though when you're actually riding, it feels like you're struggling to hold on to a bull on a bull ride. All right, I can't be asked to bring the bike back down here. Let's just, let's finish out this trail here, get to a spot, and let me see if I can talk coherently about the tire for a little bit. So, there's not much of this trail left. Maybe people are camping out at the cool spots. Maybe they're not. We'll find out. There was a Tacoma that came up this trail. And then, after a while, came back down. So I'm thinking the camping spots out here are taken. It's a beautiful weekend. But let's carry on this journey. And let me see if I can kind of keep my train of thought without being interrupted by the ride. Again, the purpose of this video is to be somewhat a review, really sharing the experience I've had with this Motoz Tractionator Adventure. When I was kind of on the fence about a handful of different tire options, I'm pretty sure I saw every Motoz Tractionator Adventure video on YouTube, and I wanted more. I wanted to see a bigger variety of riding. I wanted to get different opinions on it. Ooh, it looks like the road goes this way, right? I really couldn't get enough information, especially when trying to compare it to the Rallz, because the Rallz is consistently framed as, oh, if you want the off-road tire, go for the Rallz. But you can find a handful of people out there who say the off-road experience is quite similar with both tires. Where the Rallz shines is its lighter compound. I wish I was in first for this. Its lighter compound. Look at this, dude. Let's take the easy way. It's softer compound, sorry. Ooh, a little slippery in the front there. It's softer compounds, round 8, as well as its lug spacing, which is better for kicking up mud that might get caught in your tires. But I haven't had too much trouble with that in the Adventure. I have on the dual venture in the front, and I also have a pretty low fender on this bike, so it's kind of a problem there. But I'm very happy with the dual venture, and I don't anticipate changing that out when it comes time to change the tires. But that will totally depend on where I live, since I seem to move to a different part of the country every single year at this point in my life. The other big difference for the Rallz versus the Adventure that I can't say from experience, but everybody just kind of says this, is it does not last as long. It will not last as long. And I've learned that I'm okay with that. Getting 4,000 miles, which I expect to get more than that out of the Rallz, but getting 4,000 miles out of a tire like that is crazy to me. This thing's essentially a 500-pound dirt bike, and that tire will just keep going and going and going. And to be honest, with how quickly I get bored of a tire or parts of my bike, I'm going to go up to the left side, since this probably looks flat for you, but it berms down into a rut that I don't want to be in. And this is actually kind of sandy and a little bit loose, and it looks like there's some wet parts from some rain we got last night. And I'd totally rather slide down to this middle bit than slide down into that rut, especially at any sort of speed. But back to the tire talk, I think one of the funniest things, maybe not the funny, it's not really that funny, but I think one of the most bizarre things, that's a bit more appropriate, for what I'm doing here is, that was kind of a big blow that I chose to take and didn't need to. I am tremendously happy with my adventure tire. I don't think I need more off-road. I'm not disappointed with it on-road. I don't think I've pushed its limits. I don't really have any complaints, but what happened was I got a puncture in it right after getting it. I patched it thinking it wasn't going to last, and I needed to get, a new tire on there that wasn't dead. I'm kind of stuck in this rut here. Very sketchy. It's off camber here in a way that I do not like. And I immediately, the day I got the puncture and patched my tire, instead of waiting, I had a big trip coming up a couple weekends out, and I said, I need to get a new tire. I ordered the Rallz saying, hey, I got 1,000 miles out of my adventure tire. Why not just get a Rallz? Who cares if it's not going to last as long as the Adventure? The Adventure only lasted 1,000 miles. I should have just got the tire I wanted to begin with. And that was my logic at the time. I think it's pretty sound logic, but I have not lost a pound of air pressure out of the rear tire in any time frame that I'm aware of since patching it 2,000 or 3,000 miles ago. All right, let's get to a view here, and I will talk some more. Check out this campsite. Absolutely amazing. I'm likely leaving Colorado closer to the fall. I've lived in northern Colorado on the Front Range and moved around there a little bit. And right now I am in southern Colorado, and maybe 10 or 15 minutes from home is where the start of this trail is. And it's going to be weird to give this up. It's been a lot of fun. It's very easy to improve my riding skills out here because I can finish my work day and hit the trail straight away on a bike like this. We're near just insane trails. Anywhere within a handful of hours is just not a big deal out here. It's beautiful canyon roads to absurd trails. And I think they've been pushing my skills a lot because a lot of it is like that hill you saw earlier in the video where it's that steep, chunky, loose, rocky stuff. And I feel as though the area I'm advancing most as a rider at this point in time, and what's really bringing my skills further forward on a machine like this, is losing traction intentionally or being comfortable when I don't have traction in the rear, and learning how to maintain control of the motorcycle and actually be able to exert additional control over the motorcycle by utilizing a lack of traction at the rear tire. And that's been huge. As someone who, prior to adventure biking, came from tens of thousands of miles of sport bike riding on roads, I wasn't very familiar with losing traction on a motorcycle, nor did I want to be. And it's something I really shied away from with adventure riding my first couple of years. But as I get further and further into this sport, I'm realizing that's a lot of the fun on these rides. You can turn a boring trail into an exceptionally enjoyable trail by intentionally giving up traction at the rear end. And then you're also enforcing the muscle memory that goes along with that and maintaining your control of the bike and tight, twisty corners when you lose traction at the rear on purpose to kind of wrap your bike around the corner. It makes you feel like you know what you're doing, even if you kind of don't. But okay, let me prop up a camera, walk around and rant, and then hopefully actually stay on track with this tire once more. I just want to talk a lot about this tire, as well as my expectations for the Rallz, and just be an additional guy on the internet sharing his opinions about this extremely popular rear tire for adventure motorcycles.
Unfortunately, all of the audio for this last portion of the video is corrupted. I stayed up at this view spot walking around and talking about the Touareg for about 20 minutes, and since all of that audio is gone, I think I'm going to just kind of boil it down into some more concise closing thoughts. I want to start first by reiterating that the Motoz Tractionator Adventure has never felt like my Touareg 660's limiting factor off-road. I've taken it on some pretty extreme terrain, and I've never even had to air it down or felt the need to air it down in order to get additional performance from the tire off-road. I vary between maybe 31 and 34 PSI depending on how much road and off-road I'm doing and what I think the conditions will be like for any given ride, but I just go straight from the paved roads to the off-road and to the hard off-road, and generally the only thing I do to get ready for that is change the riding mode on the Touareg to its off-road mode. The only real cons I've found with the tire is that on-road it's a little bit louder and less confidence-inspiring than the stock Pirellis that the Touareg came with, but that's a difference of extremely low importance to me. I can still absolutely rip up the roads, and I've not really found the tire's limits, nor do I feel the need to try to find the tire's limits on road. And even if I did feel I needed to give up a good bit of road performance in order to have the off-road performance these tires offer, I'd be totally fine with doing that. Switching to the Adventure Tractionator rear tire from the Pirelli Scorpion STR that was on there provided a massive boost to my off-road confidence and my off-road capability. Granted, I was a relatively new adventure rider at the time that I switched to this tire, but the improvements I experienced as a rider during the lifetime of this tire were, to me, unbelievable. Again, I never ever felt like the Tractionator Adventure tire was a limiting factor off-road, so that was one less excuse or one less thing to blame outside of myself when riding got tough. And back to the street end of things, the tire really does continue to impress me on the street. I've had some longer road trips recently, and I air up the tire a little bit more than usual, right around 33.5 to 34 PSI, and it feels so much smoother than when I'm running a mixed PSI when I plan to just do a short trip to the trails and I don't want to deal with airing down before getting to the off-road. In short, the Tractionator Adventure just doesn't feel like a compromise, and adventure biking is hugely about compromise, and the more you ride, the more you learn that, but the Tractionator Adventure just feels capable everywhere. More than enough road performance for me, and definitely more than enough off-road performance for me. I do also want to mention that even if you don't hard off-road your adventure bike, having this tire or a tire of this off-road capability on your bike can definitely give you the confidence to try more than you otherwise would. And since you're not really giving up anything on the roads unless you really get into the corners, you can gain that confidence off-road without really giving anything up. If I had to sum that up in one sentence, it would just be less will be off limits on every ride. The Motoz Tractionator Adventure has now become my gold standard for balancing off-road traction, street performance, and tire longevity. When I think of this tire, I can't stop thinking of how great it is off-road for how good it is on-road, and something I always forget to appreciate is how long the tire lasts. I have nearly 4,000 miles on mine, I have not gone easy on it, and it seems like I'm only halfway through the tire's life. So again, amazing off-road, great on-road, phenomenal longevity. I don't think you can beat where this tire sits in terms of off-road and road capability, especially when factoring in how long it will last. In closing, the Tractionator Adventure exceeds at everything it does. It provides phenomenal off-road performance, excellent road characteristics, and truly impressive longevity. For a tire to happily get you to and from the off-road portions of your adventures, to a tire that absolutely crushes your off-road needs, to a tire you can change less frequently than your oil, I really can't recommend the Tractionator Adventure enough. Sorry that the end of this video may be a bit jarring with me from the future talking to you over a clip of me speeding around, but we turned 20 minutes of talking into 2, so pretty solid win there. With that being said, thank you for watching this far into the video. I've got some more mixed adventure content on the way, and definitely look out for my Rallz tire impressions. If you'd like to help out the channel, like if you haven't, subscribe if you haven't, and just look out for my future videos. Thanks again. See you in the next one.